Hi, I'm Alan Barnes and welcome to another edition of Cadence Fishing TV. We're here today in God's own country, Lancashire, Garstang to be precise, and we're on one of my favourite venues of all time, the Lancaster Canal. And we're just about to net a nice bream. Got you. That's what we come for, and this canal's full of them. Hope you enjoy the video. Right, well today we're at Castle Basin, which is off Dimples Lane in Garstang. It's a venue I've fished for many years. In fact, I think it was Ian Waddington at the old Ted Carter's shop who first put me onto this place, probably in about 1981-82. And it's always had a good head of bream in it. And we use it on some matches on a Tuesday night that Mick Wilson organises up here that have become very, very popular in the last couple of years, and it throws up winning weights. It's a good basin. The bream live here all year round, and they're just starting to wake up now with the warmer weather that we're getting, and I'm hoping we're going to have quite a good day. And luckily for me, I think I must have wrapped the line round this. I can't have hooked it underneath its fin there. Have I? Maybe I have. How about that? They all count in a match. I can tell you now, I've certainly hooked them there before, and they fought a lot harder than that one. But it just shows you that by virtue of the way that was hooked, I'm fishing slightly over depth, which is the way we want to present the bait. It's quite tricky today. We've got a very, very gusty side wind that's actually changing direction quite a bit. And I've had to work at my presentation in order to start catching the bream. They're certainly in the peg, they're blowing, you can see them blowing. But it's been really a matter of getting the old grey matter working to work out how to steady the float up in these windy conditions. But we seem to have cracked it now, and that's 2 bream we've just had in 2 chucks. We've started today's session with bream in mind, so we've gone for a pretty steady attack involving casters, chopped worm, a few squats and an odd pinky, dressed in a little bit of ground bait, which is the new evolved bait. It's Irish Gold. It's a nice sweamy, caramelly, sweet ground bait that's golden in colour, and it is designed for bream, and it seems to be working. They're blowing in the peg. As you know, with it being early April, it's still a bit cold and we're still getting cold nights, and I think the key with it being a canal is not to go mad, not to overdo it. You're better off just starting off by giving them a little bit of food and seeing if they'll come to it, but not overdoing it. So I've actually given them four bowls about the size of a small satsuma, and 3 of the bowls have contained chopped worm, caster and an odd squat, and the final bowl has just contained a few pinkies, and I've spread them over an area about the size of half of a pool table, let's say, because if you put them all down the same hole, the bowls of ground bait, it can lead to a lot of problems with foul looking fish. And even though I've spread them out, as you saw with the bream I caught just before, it was foul look next to its anal fin, and because the water's cold, the fish are very slow moving at the moment. So if they're just grubbing about in the peg and you're laying a couple of inches of line on the deck, there is every chance that your line from your float to the hook may catch on the fins, and you may end up foul hooking 1 or 2 fish. So that's the basic starting pattern. And as I've said, we're getting bites now, which is great, and they're blowing in the peg, and I'm hoping that it's going to be a fruitful day. The peg isn't very deep. Even though I'm in a basin, I'm probably fishing in about little more than 3.5 to 4 foot of water. The Lanky is a shallow draft canal. It was designed by the canal engineer Thomas Telford to carry goods from the ports of Preston and Lancaster. It's not as deep as, say, another local canal, the Leeds-Liverpool, which can be 5.5, 6 foot deep in a lot of places. But you know, it doesn't stop the fish from feeding. They're used to it, and now that we're getting into April and the sun is starting to make its presence felt, you can feel a bit of warmth from it. That means on a shallow canal like this, the water will start to warm up fairly quickly and retain that heat overnight. So all things being equal, I think we're in for some decent sport in the next couple of weeks. And I'd say to people watching the video, canals are a great place to try at the moment. Today, in these testing gusting conditions, I've opted for a 0.5 gram float. I mean, I try normally to get away with something like a 0.4 of a gram float when I'm in 4 foot of water, but as I said, we've got this gusting wind and it's making presentation a little bit difficult. So I've chosen a wire stem pattern, 0.5 gram. And what I have done to actually improve the situation and present the hook bait better is move the bulk, which is a group of 5 or 6 stots, down closer to the hook. So they're now about 14 inches from the hook, because when I started they're 18 inches away. That's given me a little bit more stability. I've also added a couple of number 8 backshot above the float to stop the wind from picking the line up and actually blowing the float about in the peg, because that's what was happening earlier. And whilst there were indications that fish were in the peg, I wasn't making bites. By adding an extra inch of depth to the rig, sliding the bulk down 4 inches further towards the hook and adding those backshot, it's made a great difference, and I'm now starting to catch fish. And essentially that's what we mean by good presentation. Well, I've got something on here that's leading me a merry downs. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo clue what it is. But the pole, of course, is more than up to the job. It's a CP 2000 Cadence pole, and I've got to say it's an awesome bit of kit. That's fighting a bit like a tench. I've got a number 6 census elastic through the number 2 and a micro tip. I've got a 0.12 main line, a 0.10 Preston precision hook length, and a census 3405 size 17 hook, which I like for bream fishing. I've just come out of that fish. It may have been foul hooked, I don't know, but let's get back in and get another one, eh? Bit unfortunate to lose that, but it does show you the type of fish and the size of fish that live in this canal, and you can see why it's such good sport. I'm not really having a bad day, of course. I'm just having a moan because I like moaning, and I'm just having a few sticking points because of this wind. It's making life difficult. Again, you know, that last fish, it was so difficult to try and control it and get the pole behind me onto the roller and through the hedge. It really was a lap of the gods job as to whether we got that out or not. I'm just hoping that we might get another bonus later. And that's the beauty of fishing, you never know what's going to happen next. I've got a bite now, and you can see the float lifting out, look at it. What I find is best with bream when they're like this is just give them plenty of time. Let them get that bait into the mouth properly. And a good tip is just to give the float 2 or 3 seconds after it goes under before you lift. Basically, if you think about it, when you're giving that float 3 seconds, when you're giving the float 3 seconds, it's like watching a quiver tip. You see an initial pluck and a pull. And all the best tip anglers tell you, sit on your hands, don't strike immediately, wait for that tip to go around. And it's the same with bream. They're quite a big, slow, ponderous fish. Give them a bit of time and chances are you'll hook one. Well, we're in again. We're bringing another bream in, and it's just as I said. Just give it 3 seconds. When you see that float starting to disappear, be patient, let them get it in the mouth properly, and then just slowly lift and set the hook, and then you have a chance. As you can see, it just there under the surface. Another lovely Lancaster Canal bream. That elastic's working perfectly well. There he is. Come on, baby. Come on. There we go. And there's the bait, as you can see. Little red worm from a bin I keep at home. And in fact, as you can see, look, I've hooked it just outside its mouth, which again just shows you how tricky it is today, the way they're feeding and just not having it properly. I'm just going to give them a bit more feed now, and I'm just literally rolling a conker sized ball of worm and a few casters into the pot, if I can just show you that. And I'm just going to sprinkle some of this ground bait over the top, because bream love breadcrumbs, and they certainly love this Irish gold. It's got a nice flavour to it that they like. And one of my angling heroes growing up, a fellow Prestonian, Dave Roper, who as you know became world champion, always used to say, catch a bream, feed for a bream. And that's precisely what I'm doing now. I've just caught one. We're just going to give them a pot of food and hopefully catch another. I'll just try and steady it up. That wind, it really is a nightmare. But we got away with it. We got it into the pantry. The old pantry. A little trick when you're putting a red worm on is just to nip the very end of its head off with your fingernail, and then put the hook through the cut where you've just removed the head, rather than turning it the other way up and having the cut end at the bottom. So it's like that, if you can see that. That hook is now through the cut bit. I'm finding that the bream today are really showing a preference for worm over anything else. I'm tipping the worm with a red maggot, but I'm killing the maggot first, and all you do is take a live maggot and roll it across your thigh for a few seconds. The rolling action imparts heat and friction, which kills the maggot. There we go. Not quite. That's done it. And basically just hook it on through the pointy end. So if you look at that, we've now got a worm that's been hooked through the bit where I've just nipped its head off, and we've got a dead red maggot, pointy end on. That allows plenty of room around the bend of the hook, hopefully to hook a fish. So now we'll try to get in and catch another one. And if that wind will just behave itself and stay like this, it'll be smashing. We'll be able to get a few fish. Another good friend of mine who fishes the canal a lot, Steve Wilson, is a terrific bream angler, and he gave me some wise words once, and he said, Alan, you know, when you catch a bream, You don't need to rush straight back in to catch another. Just have a couple of minutes, chop some worms up, do whatever you've got to do. Just give it another little rest. You can feed it, just give it a rest for a minute or so and go back in, and you have a better chance of getting another bite straight away then. And it also means that you're just nursing the peg, you're resting it a little bit, you're not forcing it, you're not trying to catch fish after fish after fish. And I think on a canal particularly, that's good advice. You can't really argue with his record either. I've got a bite now, and the fish is pulling the float to the right. It's pulling it towards the bridge to my right, and I'm just waiting for it to go under. There's no prizes for rushing and trying to force things when you're bream fishing. Just take your time, be patient, and you'll get your rewards. There's still something there messing about, but as I say, the water's just starting to warm up. The fish are becoming more active, but they're being a little bit cagey today, so we've just got to be patient and try our best to present the bait as well as we can, and hopefully kid one or two to have a go. That wind's grabbing my pole again now. It's really difficult at times. But I'll tell you what, this Cadence CP 2000 pole at 14.5 metres is as stiff as any pole I've ever picked up, and believe me, I've tried a few over the years. Well, things are warming up nicely now, and this is our 5th bream. Just got to take your time with them, and this wind, as I say, is making life a little bit difficult. I don't want any sudden movement to snatching at the pole with the wind to rip the hook out of the fish's mouth. It's very difficult. They are testing conditions today, but we'll just go gently, no rush, no prizes for bullying them. It is fairly important to try and get them out of the feeding area fairly promptly. There's no question of that, because you don't want them to spook the other shoal members. But by the same token, you can't really bully bream too much, because I think it's always been the case that if you lose the first one you hook, you're in trouble. You're going to find that you'll have a job to keep the shoal in your peg. They tend to swim back to the shoal and take the shoal with them and disappear out of your peg. I've certainly found that when I've been tip fishing. There we go, we've got him, we scooped him. And he's a belter, isn't he? Look at that. Beautiful fish, got to be £3 all day long. Well, we're well on course for a lovely bag of fish now. Earlier on you might have seen me chopping worms using this device. It's actually a vegetable shredder, and they cost £4, something like that on eBay. Quite a handy little device to get your worms blended to a fine mush. What I'm going to do now is refeed and give them 2 good bowls of ground bait, because we've got to the middle of the day. I've caught 7 bream and it's certainly just gone a little flat. And I think it's not the sun and the brightness, I think it's more the fact that they've eaten pretty much everything that's gone in, even the bits I've been topping up with. So I'm just going to give them another hit, going to give them 2 good bowls of chopped worm and castor and a few squats, and we'll see in half an hour whether it brings them back. So all you do with this, it's got a spinning blade in it. I put some dendies in, you just start pulling, that starts mushing the worms. We'll have a look. And there you can see, after that furious bout of cord pulling, how I've chopped them quite fine. And they're going to go in just like that. I'm going to mix them in with some ground bait. Just going to add a little bit more from the bowl. I keep it out of the sun so it doesn't dry out. Put it into there. I'm just going to wet it up with a little bit of water as well. Just scoop some up with my feeding cup. Just wet that ground bait a bit. Just so that it'll take the worm and take it down to the bottom in a bowl before it just breaks up pretty much straight away. So all of this is going in. Give them about 40 casters. Just a pinch of squats. And we'll divvy that into 2 good helpings. They're going to go in through the pole pot. I mean, that's the beauty of having a pole top kit. You can feed very accurately. And there's one bowl you see there, as you can see. That's ready to go in. Right, I'm just going to drop the first one in. I'm lining it up with the white door on the horse box opposite me. That's my marker. And trust me, the horse box isn't going anywhere, because I had a look round the back of it earlier and there's a lot of stuff piled up against it, so I don't think it's going anywhere for a while. But that's important. When you do pick a fire bank marker, make sure you pick one that isn't going to move anywhere. So we're taking a bit of a gamble. We're hoping to get the fish lined up in the pantry again with a nice generous dollop of ground bait, castor and worm. And it is something that's paid off for me, and it's paid off in matches when bream fishing. When you've got to a stage with, say, half an hour of a match to go and your peg's going away from you and you think, I've got to do something to make something happen. And a refeed can go either way. It can either kill your peg completely or it can bring it back. And I've had more occasions when it's actually triggered a response and brought some fish back into the peg than kill it altogether. So, and I'm confident we'll catch a few more through the rest of the session. So I've just refed the peg and we're just giving the bream a chance to re-establish on the feed. It's a great chance now to just talk about the rigs in a little bit of detail. And the information I'm going to impart, if you're a relative newcomer to canal fishing, I'm sure you'll find it informative. If you're brilliant and you know everything, then you don't need to pay much attention. But just for people who want to know about why I've chosen what I've chosen, you can see this float. The characteristics which I'm looking for are a round body, so that'll sit well in the water in choppy conditions. A long wire stem, which is like a keel on a yacht, which gives stability. And when bream fishing, as I've mentioned about reading the bites, the very important thing, a very long high-vis bristle, that when it's shotted properly in the water, it's sitting to about here. If I put my fingers there, I've got about that much of the bristle out, and you'll have seen, if Ian's managed to film the bristle up close when it's been in the peg, you're getting a lot of bites where it's lifting up, pulling down, lifting up, pulling down, and you're just waiting for the float to go under, and you're going to wait 2 or 3 seconds before you lift into the fish. So in terms of shotting, the basic message to anyone watching is keep it nice and simple. All you're looking for really when you're bream fishing is a block of shot or a bulk. It could be an olivet, it could be a bulk of stots like I have here, and they're approximately 16 to 17 inches from the hook, which I've got in my finger here, and all I've got between them is two smaller stots, and I haven't spread them equidistant from the block of shot to the hook, and there's a reason for that, and it's quite simple. This bottom one is just off bottom. The float's approximately a float length over depth, so that bottom shot, when the float's in the water, is just off bottom. I'm laying this much line on the bottom, and I'm having to do that to achieve good enough presentation to actually get a bite, because you can see behind me how windy it is. So that's very important. Presentation's the key to everything. When I started off, as I said, the float was set a little shallower, and unfortunately the wind was picking up the line above the float and making the float skip through, and the bream won't accept a bait that's travelling through the water sideways when all the other morsels that I've potted in the cup are sitting on the bottom and they're inert and they're not moving anywhere. It's totally unnatural to the fish when they see something chasing along. When you're on little skimmers like this, it's a different matter. You can catch those skimmers on a bait that's moving through a peg. But bigger bream like to see what they're looking at, grab it and sit there for a minute chomping on it, and then you know if you're lucky your float goes under. And like I said, that just reinforces what I said earlier about taking the same principle of quiver tipping as float fishing for bream, just waiting for the bite to develop, waiting for the float to go under, trying to count to 3 before you lift, and the chances are the fish will be on the hook. So that's the first rig, and that's the one I've used all day today, in all honesty. The main line on the rig is 0.12 Silstar, which actually marks up at near a 0.13.8. That's robust enough to handle these bream. There's no problem. You've got an elastic that acts as a shock absorber. Even the big fish I lost earlier in the footage didn't break me, did it? The hook pulled out, so you can see that's ample. The hook length line, I tend to fish with 0.10 or 0.12 again for bream, and I've been using 0.10 Preston Precision, which is a very strong line, and it's a true stated 0.10mm diameter. The hooks are crucially important, and what I've found when bream fishing on the Lanky is that my favourite hook is the Census 3405. It's a black nickel hook, you can see one there. Size 17 is an odd size, but it's a perfect size in my mind for bream. An 18 is just a bit small, a 16 can be too big. Not when they're having it properly in summer. You can get away with fishing a full dendy, as I know some anglers do in the summer months. You can go down to a 14 and give them an 8's elastic and really, fish positive. But today we're coming out of the cooler weather into early spring, and it's a hard day. It's not the easiest day. The water's a bit chilled, and so I'm hedging my bets, and I'm fishing somewhere between an 18 and a 16, using a 17. They're a very strong hook, and one other thing to mention about these hooks is that the bigger you go in size, the thicker the wire gauge is. It increases. So the 16 is actually slightly thicker wire than the 17, but I find the 17 to be perfect with 6 elastics and 5 elastics, and I use the 16 and a 14 if I'm on an 8 elastic. It's very important to match your hook strength and the gauge of the wire to the elastic you're using. If you've got a really thick wire hook and you're using a 3 elastic, you'll struggle to set it. Conversely, if you're fishing a fine wire hook and an 8 elastic, you'll straighten the hook. So it's a case of trying to marry and match the strength of the wire gauge with the strength of the elastic. Well, we've got another one now, and that's hopefully the effect of the ground bait that we've put in. I'd had a smaller skimmer just before this, but this is a proper one again, and they've clearly come back to the feed. Like I said, I try to gauge how many fish are in the peg and what I think they're eating, and I think they'd eaten everything that we'd given them, and it was a good move to put some more feed in. The canal towpath's having a haircut, and that's all the racket you can hear. We've got a guy behind us with a big mower, and we've got a guy with a strimmer to my right. And in the parlance of the Prestonians, it's what you call a job lot. There we go. Come on. we go. Well, despite all the racket on the banks of the Lancaster Canal, the bream don't seem to mind, we're still catching them. Just to be on the safe side, I'm giving them another pot full of natural goodness, because if you look towards the bridge, there's a load of grass coming down the canal that's going to wipe me out for 20 minutes or so, that the guy with the strimmer's just cut and it's all gone into the canal. So far today, the most successful baits have been double dead red maggot and a live red pinky, as you can see here. Another really successful bait on the Lancaster Canal, and one you really shouldn't come here without, are some red worms. And obviously they're very easy to keep. You can keep them at home, create your own wormery, but you can see the action, the wriggliness of these baits. Bream can't resist them. Fantastic bream bait, don't leave home without it. Another essential bait for bream, and a bait that's worked very well today, has been the caster, usually presented in double caster fashion. I go in through the pointy end and rotate the hook around, pull it out the side to put number one on. Get another caster, they can be the same colour or you can have a combination of different shades. Again, pointy end, because it'll help you to pull the hook through it better, and just slide it on so that it's sitting parallel with the first one. And bream absolutely adore casters. I've fed about 1/4 pint today, that's all, because the water's been cold, but I've fed them in with the chopped worm and ground bait, and you know, it's kept the bream rooting about on the bottom looking for them. One more point on the bait front is what I keep maggots in. You may have noticed them on the side tray and wondered what on earth this is. It's actually bran, and the reason I put maggots for the canal in bran is that I believe that A, it softens them, which is important because the fish are finicky and they like softer baits, and running them and keeping them in bran for several days makes them slightly softer than using maize meal or sawdust. The other thing you can do is dampen it down with a bit of water, and you can actually add a flavour to it. So you could add something like brasem or vanilla if you wished, and you know that the maggots are working through that, and it might just leave the faintest trace of that flavour on the skin. So there you go, another great tip. Well, what a great session that's been. I think we'll make this the last fish. Let's have a look at what we've got. 11 Lancaster Canal bream, fantastic sport. Canals are largely neglected and shouldn't be. They're enjoying a rebirth, there's plenty of fish in them all over the country, so why not give them a try this spring? And thanks for watching.